Happy Labor Day, everybody. Jimmy here in Chicago. We're going to do a story today. We're going to talk about an actual making ceremony of some of the made members of the Chicago outfit. I'm going to read to you the transcripts and talk about Nick Calabrese's testimony at the legendary family secrets trial. According to Nick, there was an actual making ceremony, just like you see in the movies, where they had a gun, a knife, and a burning holy card, where each guy was called in one by one and had to repeat an oath, omerta. This has been another great week in Chicago. Great Labor Day. We had the Pearl Jam show going on Thursday night, Saturday night at Wrigley. Two great shows. We had the Melrose Park Fest going on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I went all 3 days. A lot of good food. Everything was $4. Entertainment. Some of the outfit guys, associates, family, and friends were there. This fest has been going on for, I think, 40 plus years. Very similar to the Elmwood Park Fest and the Taylor Street Fest. So next summer, I highly recommend checking out these three festivals. We'll talk about some of the people that I ran into. Here's a guy that I saw zipping around. You got Mr. Doty. Now, does this guy look like a wise guy, like a mob guy to you? But according to the government, Mr. Doty is definitely an associate of the Chicago outfit. I've seen this man several times. He was a cafe, restaurant owner. They used to own Danny's Grill in Melrose Park. I think he was a part-time bookie back in his day. And at the Melrose Park Fest, Mr. Doty is there serving a delicious fried meatball sandwich. Let's read a couple of the comments here. Primo, did you get a chance to go to the Melrose Park Fest? As we all know, Melrose Park is used to be a wonderful Italian neighborhood, very similar to Taylor Street, Grand Avenue, Bridgeport, Elmwood Park. There's a lot of manufacturing plants, a lot of business in Melrose Park. You got Kittyland. You got the racetrack. There used to be a roller rink we used to go to. Al Pimani had a car dealership. But a lot of Italian, a lot of good people were born and raised in this neighborhood, and they had a great festival. Afterwards, a lot of people hung out and went to the Tavern on Division. Excellent restaurant, delicious food. They have a great DJ, and they kind of turned into a dance club late night. You got all the beautiful people here, all the beautiful women, all the Italian wise guys, family, friends, associates. I felt, going back like it was in the late 80s, or early 1990s. Let's read a couple of the comments here. Yeah, Mr. Serpico, I didn't see the mayor there, but him and his staff, they put on one of the best fests in the city. Tom, what's going on, man? Thanks for checking in. We're going to talk about the making ceremony. Some of the made men that were made the same day that Nick Calabrese was made. And I want to know if you guys believe Nick Calabrese. We're going to read the transcripts. I found him credible for the most part. Here's a couple guys I ran into also at the Tavern on Rush. These handsome gentlemen here. There's Paulie C. and one of his cousins and myself hanging out at the Tavern on Division right there in Melrose Park. All the wise guys were here last night. It was a lot of fun. Paulie C and his crew welcomed me with open arms. I sat down at their table. I don't think I paid for anything. Free food, free drink, a lot of beautiful women, and a great DJ. A nice little red Ferrari parked out front. Nice old school Cadillac. But coming up, I want to talk about, I may have an interview coming up with Ronnie Jarrett Jr.'s son. I want to try to get him and see if he'll open up and talk about the legacy of his father, Ronnie Jarrett. We all know Ronnie Jarrett was an associate of the 26th Street crew, did a lot of work for Angelo LaBull and the Calabrse brothers. He was talked about a lot at the Family Secrets trial. Ronnie Jarrett was actually Angelo LaBull's driver at one point. And unfortunately for Ronnie Jarrett, he was killed by Tough Tony Calabrese, who was given the order from Johnny Apes. Johnny Apes and Ronnie Jarrett had beef, and eventually Ronnie Jarrett was killed. But hopefully I can get Ronnie Jarrett Jr., his son, who testified at the Family Secrets trial on that horrible day when his father was killed. Also, last night I met this young stud on the far left, Mark Polkman Jr. I remember seeing him as a little kid, as a young boy, as a young teenager during his father's trial. And now he grew up to be a man. I'm sure his father would be very proud of him. Mark Polkman, as we all know, alleged high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang member. He got indicted along with Mike Sarno. And the government definitely overcharged this gentleman. At first they gave him 60 years. 60 years. Mike Sarno, alleged boss of Chicago Alpha, gets 25 years. And yet the co-defendant, Mark Polkman, somehow gets 60 years. I mean, talk about overcharge. There was no drugs involved. There was no guns and no killing. But yet, the judge, the prosecutor overcharged him, ended up giving him 60 years. I think that got reduced to maybe 30, 40 years. But hopefully, this man here, Mark Polkman, stand-up guy, a man's man, hopefully he'll get released one day and come home to his family. But I'm hoping to get an interview from his son. Let's read some more comments here. Tom, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I was very fortunate to attend the Family Secrets trial. Not that I'm special or anything, but it's open to the public. Anyone could go to a trial. They're open to the public, and some of them are more interesting than any movie, any book, any documentary. I highly recommend it. I started going to trials back in the early 1990s, all the way to the mid-2000s. But unfortunately, there's not too many trials left. Yeah, Mark Polkman, high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang member, co-defendant of the Mike Sarno trial. The judge gave him 60 years. Again, no guns, no drugs, no murder. Let's. I want to hear from you guys. I'm going to read to you Nick Calabrese's transcripts, and I want to know if you believe Nick Calabrese. I found him credible for the most part because he had so much detail, but definitely not 100%. I felt he flip-flopped a few times and maybe told a few white lies. That would have caused me to have reasonable doubt. But the government, they do a really good job of corroborating some of the government's witnesses' testimony. Good question, Primo. I do believe that the boss usually is present, and definitely in the making ceremony we're going to talk to Joe Ayupa, boss of Chicago Alpha at the time, led the making ceremony according to Nick Calabrese. Justin, what's going on? Yeah, right there, that is in the heart of Elmwood Park. Not too sure what that hall you're referring to is. That might be one of the clubs there. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we are going to talk about the making ceremony according to Nick Calabrese. Hopefully, you guys can read my see my screen. Let me scroll down here. So we left off. We talk about the murders of half and half murders. The being that was Richard Chico Ortiz and the Pollock guy. Nick Calabrese testified that both of them were shotgun blasted to death. So now Mitch Mars, he asked Nick Calabrese, "Can you tell us when the ceremony took place?" Nick replied, "Sometime at the beginning of October." "Were you to be made?" Nick replied, "Yes." "And how is it that you were advised that you were to be made at this particular occasion?" Nick Calabrese replied, "It was a Friday night, and my brother said, 'We got to go by Brother Jimmy.' That's what we called him sometime. Brother Jimmy. Brother Jimmy." "Who was that in reference to?" "Jimmy LaPetria." "And we went to his house, and we left with him, and he was driving us down to Bridgeport to go see Angela LaPetria. He dropped us off near his home. We walked and went into Angela's house. We went into the basement. We sat at a table, me, my brother, and Angelo." "And did you have a conversation with Angela LaPetria at the time?" Nick replied, "Yes." "What did he say to the two of you?" That he recommended us to be made, and if we wanted it, did we want to do that? In other words, given a choice, in my mind, I'm thinking if I say no, would I ever see the next day? So I said yes. "Now, did you perceive this as being a test of some kind?" Mitch Mars asked. Nick replied, "Yes." "And what about your brother? What was his response?" "He said yes." "And so the two of you were going to be made?" Nick replied, "Yes." "Can you tell us, first of all, in this organization, in the outfit, just what does that mean to be made?" "Well, you become part of like a brotherhood. You're trusted. Then you're in that inner, not the inner circle, but that scope that is around all the made guys. You belong to whatever you want to call it. Is there any sort of financial benefit to being made?" "Usually when you're made, you get a chance to make more money, yes." "And what about your obligation or a made member's obligation to the outfit?" "Well," Nick replied, "you're a lifetime member. There's only one way out." "What way is it?" Nick replied, "Feet first," meaning you're in for life. "You're in for life?" To your understanding, were there any qualifications or restrictions as to who could, in fact, be made in the outfit? Nick replied, "One of them was that you had to be involved in killings, and you had to be all Italian. You couldn't be part Italian. So you had to perform a murder on behalf, or at least one on behalf of the outfit." "One or more," Nick replied. "Yes." "And you also had to be trusted." "And how is it that somebody would actually be recommended to be made?" "They would be recommended through their captain or their capo." "And at that point in time, when and your brother were recommended, who was your capo?" Nick replied, "Angelo LaPetria." "Could people who were not 100% Italian, but who had in fact committed murders on behalf of the outfit, achieve the same status?" "Can you repeat that?" Mitch Mars asked him, "If you were not 100% Italian, but you had committed a murder on behalf of the outfit, was there any sort of similar status accorded to these people?" "No." Up until that time, no. "And once you were made, did you have any further obligations with respect to the organization?" "Just continue doing what you're doing. Just do what you're told to do." "Was there a status when the outfit that was called actually, I guess, in vernacular to be put on the shelf. Yeah, I heard that term before. What does that mean? It means you're not to do anything. You're not to do any kind of illegal activity at all. In other words, they're just putting you on the shelf and you sit there. Rather, maybe you did something wrong and it doesn't warrant you being killed, so they just shelve you. Are you terminated from the outfit? No. You're still a member. Yes. And are you still obliged to perform activities on the benefit of the outfit? Blah, blah, blah. Yes. Now, with respect to your own making, where were you and your brother? Were you and your brother the only ones made in the fall of 1983? The fall of 1983 was when Nick Calabrese and others were made. No. And is there, in fact, some kind of ceremony attached to being made? Nick replied, yes. And what is that ceremony? I didn't know. I didn't know it until I got there. Nick testified, and this was so interesting. He said, you're called into a room. Well, let me stop you and kind of set the stage for your own making. Do you recall when it was, in fact, you were made? It was on a Sunday morning. We went, my brother, he got a car from a dealer. It had dealer plates or a sticker on it. So in case there was any heat around, they happened to take the license plate. It wouldn't come back to anybody but to the dealer where the car was from. We met him, and then we drove to a restaurant. Now, who is us? Me, my brother, Jimmy LaPetria, drove us to a restaurant on Roosevelt, west of Manheim. If anybody knows where that restaurant is, please let me know. Do you remember the name of it? Nick replied, no. And do you know when this took place in 1983? It took place on a Sunday. The only way I could tell you is I remember afterwards, I went by the house in Elmwood Park, and the Chicago Bears were playing football. They were playing against the Minnesota Vikings. And do you remember what month that was? Nick replied, October. So in October, in which the Bears played the Vikings on a Sunday. Yes, it was 2 days after we had saw Angelo on a Friday when you got into the restaurant on Roosevelt Road. What, if anything, did you do? We were let in. We were let into a kitchen area where there were several guys sitting around. Oh, sorry, guys. Who let you in? Oh, I lost it. I don't remember who let us in. And do you remember who else was sitting around when you got to the restaurant? Yes. Who? Who was there? My brother, myself, Jimmy Marcello, Tony Zizzo, Rocky and Felice, Johnny Matassa, Frank Belamonte, Albert Taco, and Nick. I think his last name was Gazzino. And who are these individuals? Mitch Mars asked. Well, 2 are from Chicago Heights. 2 were from Carlisi, Sam Carlisi. Me and my brother were with Angelo, along with Rocky. And Frank Belmonte and John Matassa were with Vince Solano. So these individuals from various crews of the outfit? Yes. Do you know whether the individual you just named were also to be made that day? Yes. So these are all the guys that were made that day, according to Nick Calabrese. And were the Capos present, if you recall, during the course of the stay? Yes. What happened when you came into the restaurant and you saw the individuals that were to be made? We just sat there and waited, and they took us one at a time. Now, what part of the restaurant were you sitting in? Part of the kitchen? Were the Capos sitting in there with you? No, just the guys to be made. Yes. So then what happened? Well, then a guy would come. His name was Tornabini, Al Tornabini. That's the pizza man. He took us in one at a time. Was Al Tornabini a made guy? If he had to be there, he had to be made. Yes. And would he take these individuals one at a time to where? To part of the restaurant where the Capos were sitting at the table with the boss, Joey Iupa. Joey Iupa was present at this occasion. Nick replied, yes. And at that time, in fact, boss of the outfit, yes. Were you taken in a room in the presence of Joey Iupa? Yes. And what Capos do you recall being present? It was Johnny Bananas, Johnny DeFranzo, Sam Carlisi, Toots Palermo, Vince Solano, and Angelo LaPetria. And do you recall if anybody else was present from that crew, from the outfit? Joey Upa, Do you remember if Jack Cerrone was present? No, I didn't. No, I don't. When it was turned to be brought, were all the capos sitting in the same area with Iupa? Yes, they were all sitting at a table. So just picture all those heavyweights sitting at a table, at a long table or two tables put together. And when you're brought into the arena where the tables were, blah, 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 I was let in and I stood facing Joe Iupa on the other side of the table. On the table, Nick testified were a gun and a knife and a candle. And there was some conversation before it happened, but I don't remember what it was about. All I remember is saying, after he asked me something, I says, I wasn't brought up that way. Now, what was it that he asked you or said to you? I don't recall. Keep in mind, this was many years ago that Nick's reminiscing about this. It probably had something to do with, I don't know, I don't remember. Well, there any sort of oath administrated? Afterwards, this initial conversation came around. He took a holy card. Iupa took a holy card and lit it on fire and threw it in my hand. Who did that? Joey Iupa. He actually put a holy card in your hand? Nick replied, yes. And lit it? Yeah. And what happened? And then repeat after me 3 times. If I give up my brothers, may I burn in hell like this holy pitcher. And to say this 3 times. Did you do that? Nick replied, yes. This is the making ceremony just like the movies. And when that occurred, after that occurred, what happened? Then he took a pin and pricked my finger so a little blood came out. Iupa did that? Yes. And I think you said that was Angelo Petrie at the time. Now, with respect to the other capos that were present, you mentioned Vince Solano. Who was there to represent him being made? Nick replied, Frank Belamonte and Johnny Pudgy Matassa. Do you know Belamonte and Matassa at this point? No, I just met them that day. And with respect to Mr. Marcello, who was there to sponsor or represent him? Which capo? Sam Carlisi. And was anybody else from the crew in addition to James Marcello? Nick replied, Tony Zizzo. Now, was anybody from DeFranzo's crew present to be made? Nick replied, no. And why was DeFranzo there? Because he was a capo. Who was the sponsor for? I think you said there was an individual named Gazzino, Toots Palermo. And what crew was he representing? Chicago Heights. Was there anybody else from that crew that was being made? Nick replied, El Taco. And did you know El Taco or Mr. Gazzino at the time? Nick replied, no, I didn't. At this time, is there anyone else at the time? Do you know where Joe Lombardo was at the time? Nick replied, he was in jail. Now, after all the vigils were made, was there any sort of ceremony or any function? Now, we'll stop right there. Let's get back to some of the comments. Primo, what's going on? Bambi, how are you? Thanks for tuning in. No, I never heard of dog homes, but I know they made anywhere from 10 to 15,000 per dog fight. Yeah, you know, the myth is that you had to be 100% Italian to become a made member, but obviously there were guys like Jimmy Marcello, who was half Irish, that was a made member as well. Interesting, Tom. I don't know. Great point. Not sure about that. Justin, good question. For the most part, most of the people, associates, family members, friends, most of them like my channel because I'm not bashing the outfit guys or the associates. However, I do have a couple haters, and I definitely keep them in check. But for the most part, I definitely get some mostly positive feedback. And again, vast majority of my Chicago mob trial stories are all about the trials that I went to. I mean, no disrespect to any outfit guy, associate, family, friend, and especially the victims. As far as 2024 guys, there's really no more 2024 guys. The outfit is pretty much long gone, And whatever guys are left, most of those guys have all went legit. Yeah, great neighborhood. Any more questions? What do you guys know? Do you guys feel Nick Calabrese was credible? Let me go through some pictures here really quick. Again, Mitch Mars, one of the best prosecutors in the country. He's the one that took Nick Calabrese through the direct cross-examination. You could see how detailed and prepared he was. According to Nick Calabrese, it was this man here, Joey Aiuppa, boss of Chicago outfit, that led the Macon ceremony in the early 1990s. And it was this man here, along with Aiuppa, that was part of the Macon ceremony. You had the pizza man, Al Tornabini. This man was here, Capo, boss of the 26th Street crew, Angelo LaPetria. He was present during the Macon ceremony. His right-hand man, Jimmy LaPetria, he was present as well. He was made, along with the rest of the guys that day. Jimmy LaPetria was one of the men that took part in the brutal beatdown of the Splatro brothers. Nicky Calabrese, if you believe Nick Calabrese, there was an actual making ceremony with a gun on the table, a knife where Nick's finger was pricked. Aiuppa made him repeat an oath while they burned the holy card. So that was the initiation. That was the ceremony. This was riveting testimony from Nick Calabrese to actually hear about a real making ceremony. Again, for the most part, I found this coward, this informant, this snitch credible, but some people do not believe Nick Calabrese. Frankie Calabrese was a made man that day, and he was very happy to be made. That was probably the biggest honor in his career. Frank Calabrese was probably the biggest loan shark in Chicago. As we all know, his son and his brother testified against him. John Feccarata, he was made earlier than 1980s. Prior to the ceremony, Feccarata was present as well. John No Nose DeFranzo, Johnny Bananas was present. Sam Carlisi, boss of Chicago outfit, was present as well. Some people don't believe that a lot of these Chicago outfit heavyweights would all get together at the same place at the same time, but according to Nick Calabrese, they fact indeed. Rocky and Felice was present as well. Jimmy Marcello became made that day as well. Right under Jimmy Marcello, his right-hand man, Tony Zizzo, was made as well that day. Tony Zizzo, as we all know, had a fallout with Sarno. There was a new shift. This guy went missing. He left his car in Melrose Park. Until this day, he has not been seen. Most people fear that he's been killed, but this is probably one of the latest victims of the Chicago outfit. But I have a feeling he might have lambed it. But Tony Zizzo was there as well. Out of Chicago Heights, El Taco. El Taco was there. El Taco became made that day as well. He participated in the brutal beatdown of the Splatro brothers, as well as the botched burial. And El Taco's wife testified against him. He called her yelling, swearing, screaming the day the Splatros went missing. She picked him up in Northwest Indiana. She testified that he was in work clothes. First time she ever seen him in work clothes. He was dirty. He was out of breath, and he was angry. And he, according to her, he talked about how they botched the burial of the Splatro brothers. Those brothers were supposed to never be found. They lost communication with the transmitters and the walkie-talkies. But it was Al Taco's wife that testified against him. He lambed it, went to Europe, but this is a photo of him when he returned to Chicago O'Hare Airport. The feds were there waiting for him. Let's read a couple more comments here, guys. Yeah, Joey O'Brien, Joey Doves. Ayupa, that guy goes back to the Al Capone days. And one thing about Ayupa, he led the outfit with an iron fist. He led with fear. He believed in violence. Henry Hill, what a joke. One of the biggest rats, informants, drug addicts, alcoholics ever made. How could jurors, and prosecution cut deals with lowlifes like this? Yeah, I heard that. I heard for some reason Sam Giancana did not like Joy Upa Doves, but we all know what happened to Giancana. But yeah, I heard that. Nikki, yes, what's going on, man? Thanks for tuning in. You know, I always represent. I always, show respect to the victims. But some of these victims, they definitely weren't Boy Scouts. Hope you're doing well, Nikki. Yeah, the politicians, these are the real gangsters, man. The Chin, are you serious? The Chin outsmarted them all for years, man. All right, let's get back to it. We will talk about Vince Solano, boss of the North Side, boss of the Rush Street crew. He was present as a capo during the making ceremony. This man was made that day. Pudgy, John Matassa, Dominic Toots Palermo, representing Chicago Heights, was there. And then Nick goes on to testify that a couple weeks or months later, on a Father's Day, that Jimmy DeForty, Poker, Rhoda, Tires, he was made that day after the making of Nick. Anthony the Hatch Chirmani was made. Peter Greedy DeFranzo was made as well. Jerry Scarpelli was made on Father's Day after the making ceremony of Nick Calabrese. Rudy Fratto was made as well. And now, last video I did a little story about Joe Lopez, how, he's one of the best defense attorneys in Chicago, pretty much Chicago's mob attorney, if you will. He represented Sam Carlisi. I've seen him represent Mario Ranone, Frank Calabrese, and others. I don't know how the hell he kept Frank Calabrese in check during the Family Secrets trial, but Joe Lopez told me that Anthony the Hatch during the Carlisi trial was much more harder to control than Frank Calabrese. Now, I want to share a video with you of Joe Lopez getting in a fight with some lowlife that he represented. One thing I like about Joe Lopez, not only is a sharp dresser, but he doesn't represent any informants. He doesn't represent any snitches or rats. And you got to respect a guy like that. So let me share my screen with you. I'm going to try to play this little clip if I can. Now, here's the bullpen in the notorious Cook County Jail, one of the most corrupt, largest, dangerous, nastiest holding jails in the country, right there with Rikers Island and LA County Jail. But you're going to see there's the bullpen here where they lock everybody together, and you're going to see Joe Lopez coming up on the right. One of the inmates is talking shit to him, and watch what happens. Crack! Joe Lopez punched the lowlife right in the face. You got to love an attorney like that, right? He's right there in the holding cell, not taking any shit from this guy. But yeah, I wanted to share that guy, just to show you Joe Lopez, tough son of a bitch. If you're ever in trouble, definitely want to reach out to this guy. Let's read a couple more comments. Primo. Yeah, Rico was the real boss. I love the story how Tony Arcardo posed as a lawyer so he can go visit Rico when Rico was locked up. Were you able to see the video of Joe Lopez? Let me try it again. Not sure here. Try it again. See if you guys, I'm not sure if you can see this or not. There's the bullpen in the county jail. You're going to see Joe Lopez, the shark, Frank Calabrese lawyer, come up on the right. The inmate's talking shit. Boom, cracks him right in the eye. All right, guys, let's do a recap really quick of the making ceremony according to Nick Calabrese. And I want to hear from you guys. Do you believe Nick Calabrese's testimony? Do you believe all the heavyweights that were there that day when they personally, brutally beat the Splotros to death? Do you believe all the heavyweights were riding around in a car when they killed Nicholas DeAndrea? Do you believe all these heavyweights in the Chicago outfit were present at the restaurant when Nick Calabrese was made? I want to hear from you. Please enter into your comments. If you guys like my Chicago mob trial stories, hit the like button, bro. Subscribe, share with your friends. If you want to donate to my channel, please donate to my channel. And if you like, I'd be more than happy to send you the transcripts of Nick Calabrese's testimony so you could read them. We'll go through it really quick. Again, great weekend in Chicago. Pearl Jam was in town Thursday night, Saturday night. 2 great shows. You have the Taste of Melrose Park going on. You got this guy here, Mr. Doty, zipping around the fest. Afterwards, we all hung out at Tavern on Rush. Ran in a couple great men here, all stand-up guys. Talked about Mark Polchman, high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang member. This guy definitely got screwed over by the feds. He got 60 years in prison. No drugs, no weapons, no murder. That was a personal vendetta the government had against this guy. Through a good lawyer, he got his sentence reduced, and hopefully he'll be coming home, hopefully within 10 years. But I'm going to try to get an interview with Mark Polchman Jr. Ronnie Jarrett, as we all know, was killed by the other Calabrese, no relation to Nick or Frank Calabrese. Ronnie Jarrett was Angelo Petria's driver and a tough son of a bitch, stand-up guy. And I'm going to try to get an interview with Ronnie Jarrett Jr. as well so we could talk about the legacy of his father. Here's my guy, Paulie C. We were out last night. Paulie C. Was really cool to me. Let me sit down at his table. Food, drinks, women, the life. Love this guy. Hopefully I look forward to seeing him again. Mitch Mars. Unfortunately for Mitch Mars, he passed away after the Family Secrets trial. I think he had lung cancer. But during the trial, remember, you could tell he had a sore throat and he kept drinking a lot of water. But none of us knew he had throat cancer. And unfortunately, after the Family Secrets trial, Mitch passed away. God bless Mitch Mars and his family. But this was the Chicago outfit's #1 nemesis. Joey Upa, boss of Chicago outfit. He was the one that led the making ceremony, along with this guy here, Al Tornabini. The bull, Angelo Petria, was there. His brother, Jimmy LaPetria, was made that day. Nick Calabrese was made that day. Frankie Sr. was made that day. Feccarata was made prior to that. John No Nose DeFranzo was there. Sam Carlisi was there. Rocky, Jimmy Marcello were made that day. Zizzo was made that day. El Taco was made. Vince Lano was there. Pudgy was made. Toots Palermo from Chicago Heights was there. Nick said that Frank Belamonte and Nicky Gazzino was there. Poker was made as well. No, Poker and a couple guys were made a few months later on Father's Day. Anthony the Hatch, Peter DeFranco was made. Scarpelli, we all know what happened to him. He was in the MCC awaiting trial, and some people think he committed suicide, but some people think that Frankie Schweiss killed him because they were both on the same floor together. Rudy Fratto of Elmwood Park was made that day as well. Let's get back to, we'll wrap it up with, finish up with Nick Calabrese's testimony. Bear with me, I got to find the page. So Nick's on the stand telling Mitch Mars about the making ceremony that he was part of. And he named a lot of heavyweights in the Chicago outfit that were made that day. So let me fast forward here. Nick talks about each man was called in one by one. Joy Upa pricked their finger. There was a knife, a gun on the table, and he burned a holy card. It was funny. Frank Calabrese said afterwards that he felt kind of uneasy about that holy card being burnt in his hand. Okay, here we go. Do you know where Joe Lombardo was at this time? Nick replied, in jail. Now, after all the individuals were made, was there any sort of ceremony or function after that? Then Nick talks about, no, at that time, we got up, we walked towards where we were, and we got congratulated again. And then we left with Angelo because his brother Jimmy picked us up. First, let me know. Oh, now Mitch Mars is taking Nick Calabrese, showing him certain photos. They showed a lot of photos of mob guys. So he posted the photos. They're talking about Pudgy. Different nicknames they had for guys. Fa. They would refer to Angelo Petrie as ZZ. Talks about how after you were made, the proper way to introduce somebody. Again, if you guys want to read these transcripts, just shoot me an email. Be more than happy to send them to you. You would say, this is Amiga Nostra. This is a friend of ours. And if it was a friend of mine, you would say he's a friend of mine. Just like in the movies, if I was to introduce somebody to you and he wasn't a made guy, I would say this is a friend of mine. Enough with the transcripts. But I love it afterwards. Angelo the Bull, he told Nick Calabrese and his brother, now you guys got a little insurance. Not much, but a little. But that's the making ceremony. And according to Nick Calabrese, I did a shorter story on some prior YouTube stories if you want to check them out. The making ceremony, if you will. Let's read the bale bearings. Yeah, the hip mall. I heard that John DeFranco had a piece of that years ago. Yeah, I didn't know that. I for the most part, I thought the Chicago outfit, at least the bosses and the capos, were not involved in drugs, just unlike the New York guys. But I'm sure some of the associates were definitely into drug because there was so much money to be made. But I don't know about the bosses. I don't think they were involved in drugs. Let's read some more here. Did they take video of Frank Sr. and Jr. talking about how he shotgun, I think, Ortiz with a double. Yeah, there's prison videotapes where Frank Calabrese and his son Jr. are talking in code, where Jr. got Frank. He was talking about Nick saying, "Hey, Dad, I thought, we don't kill innocent people," referring to the Pollock. So, yeah, Junior did a good job of conning his father, getting Frank Calabrese to talk about that murder. And Frank talked about the ammunition, the double aughts they used, and how it really tore up the bodies of Ortiz and the Pollock guy. But yeah, there's video of Frank Calabrese and Junior talking about that. Interesting, Justin. Yeah, I didn't know that. I know that when Giancana got out of prison, he took over the street lottery from the black gangs. But I'd like to maybe learn more about that. Let's read a few more. Mick, what's going on all the way from Australia, mate? If you're ever in Chicago, I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're ever in the great city of Chicago. Thanks for tuning in, Mick. Appreciate all your support. Yeah, again, Joey, for the most part, Nick Calabrese came across credible. He had so much detail, but you got to remember, he's reminiscing the crimes that happened in the 1970s and 1980s. 2007, he's talking about crimes that happened 70s and 80s. So it was kind of hard for him to remember every single thing. Like, for example, he thought he saw Rocky and Felice out of the corner of his eye, but the government had Rocky under surveillance when the Splotches were killed. So Rocky couldn't be at two places at the same time. So, like I said, for the most part, Nick came across credible, but there was a couple little white lies he told. I thought that he kind of flip-flopped on Jimmy Marcello. But again, the prosecution does a pretty good job cooperating everything, tying up all the loose ends. But Nick Calabrese's testimony is pretty much crippled what was left of the Chicago outfit. Let's see if we got some here. I don't want to miss any comments. Nikki, were you able to see the video of Joe Lopez smacking the guy in the bullpen? If not, let me know and I'll send it to you. You can find it on YouTube too. Now, Tom, as I mentioned, after Nick Calabrese was made, a couple months later on Father's Day, Jimmy DeForty was made. Anthony the Hatch Chiaramonte, Peter DeFranzo, and a couple other guys, Rudy Frado. Those guys were made afterwards, but I'm not sure if there was a making ceremony after that. It's probably the last making ceremony. Gianna, what's going on, man? Yeah, if you're looking for that video that with Joe Lopez, just go to Joe Lopez space Cook County Jail, and you'll see him punching one of the inmates in the bullpen. But that's what a badass Joe Lopez is. I appreciate everything, guys. If you like my Chicago Mob Trials, please hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. Hope everybody's having a great Labor Day weekend. I want to dedicate this Labor Day weekend to all my family, all my friends that are no longer with us. They're in heaven. We're very blessed for all of us to be here. Appreciate all your support. Thanks a lot, Primo. If you guys would like the Nick Calabrese transcripts, shoot me an email. you have any questions or comments, let me know. Go through it one more time. We're going to talk about, according to Calabrse, it was this man here. Joe Lopez, boss of Chicago outfit. He conducted the ceremony along with Al Tornabini. Capos were there, were Angelo LaPetria. He sponsored his brother Jimmy LaPetria, Jimmy the Lapper, who was made that day. Nick Calabrese was made that day. His brother Frank Sr. was made that day. John Theckerata, a capo, was there to sponsor as well. Sam Carlisi, a capo, a boss at the time, was there to sponsor as well. Rocking Felice, Jimmy Marcello was made that day. Tony Zizzo was made that day. Al Taco was made that day. Vince Solano was a capo representing Pudgy Matassa. When Jimmy Marcello and Mikey Marcello would refer to Pudgy, they would rub their belly. They would refer to him as Fa-Fa. Out of Chicago Heights, you had Dominic Toots Palermo was there. Nicky Gazzino was made that day. And then a couple months later on Father's Day, Jimmy Poker DeForty was made. Anthony the Hatch Tirmani became made. Peter Greedy DeFranzo became made. Scarpelli was made that day in the second making ceremony, as well as Rudy Fratto. Rudy Fratto got pinched selling. He had a contract selling forklift services to McCormick Place. He got pinched, but he's now a free man. Hopefully he's behaving himself. This man is alive and well. Alleged guy from the Elmwood Park crew. Made member of the Wild Bunch, Scarpelli. This guy was killed in the MCC. Peter DeFranzo did some time in prison, I think Leavenworth. Went legit with DMP Construction, made a fortune legitimately. He ended up passing away not too long ago. I think he died of COVID. The Hatch, very dangerous man here. He was killed outside Brown's Chicken in Lyons, Illinois by tough Tony Calabrese. Jimmy Poker. Frank Calabrese thought for sure Poker was an informant, but he gave the FBI nothing. Stand-up guy. Did some time, but never ratted, never rolled. Died of, I think, natural causes. Not too sure what happened to Gazzino here. If you guys know, let me know. Toots Palermo passed away. This man, I believe, is still alive. Him and his wife got pinched not too long ago. They had a special little scam going. But Pudgy is an active made member of Chicago outfit, one of the last Mohicans. Vince Solano died. Taco died, I think, in prison. Zizzo, MIA. This guy's been missing for several years now. Some people think he was the latest victim of the Chicago outfit. Probably got killed over a power struggle. But I think maybe he lambed it. Jimmy Marcello, unfortunately, is locked up for life. Thanks to Nick Calabrese's testimony, Jimmy Marcello is locked up. I think he's at the ADX Supermax. Hopefully Jimmy will come home one day. Rocky and Felice, we all know, he got pinched in the Good Ship Lollipop trial based on the lies and stories, made-up stories that low-life blowjob Jehoda said. Sam Carlisi, I went to his trial in the early 1990s. He was convicted, did some time in prison, eventually came home, passed away. DeFranzo outsmarted them all, made a fortune legitimately. Some people think he was an informant. I don't believe he was. What do you guys think? But DeFranzo, unlike some of his fellow mob guys, he didn't believe in violence. He felt violence brought too much heat, so he stopped using violence. He told everybody in his crew, no more killing, no more beating up anybody. Let's go legit. And as a result, made millions of dollars. Fekirada, as we all know, made member Chicago outfit. He took part in the Spilotro murders. He was part of the hit team that was sent out west. But the bosses had enough of Fekirada's bullshit, and it was Nick Calabrese, his best friend, that killed him right off Belmont Avenue. Frankie Calabrese, the biggest loan shark in Chicago, he ended up dying in prison on his favorite day of the year, Christmas. Nick Calabrese passed away not too long ago. He's so lucky because Jimmy Marcello, his brother, had a contract on Nick Calabrese's head, and men like Mikey Sarno, Joe the Builder, and others were the biggest threat to Nick Calabrese when he was under the government protection. But Nicky Calabrese came very close to getting killed. They even tried to smuggle a gun into the jail. But he ended up cooperating, flipping, testified against his own brother, and pretty much crippled what was left of the Chicago outfit. And for his cooperation, he ended up doing maybe 4 or 5 years in prison. So the guy commits 14 murders, admits that he's not that smart, admits that he's a coward, shows no remorse, and Judge Jago gives him the deal of a lifetime. Jimmy LaPetria, I'm sure he did time in prison as well, but never got killed by the outfit. Angela LaPetria got indicted during the strawman case, and I heard he didn't hold up too well in prison. He's a tough son of a bitch outside the walls, but inside the walls, he couldn't hold up very well. I think he came home, and he eventually died of old age. Al Tornabini died of old age as well. Iupa got out of prison, came home to Oak Brook. First thing he did was he raised the Italian-American flag. He died of natural causes. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Mitch Mars died shortly after the family secrets trial. Let's read a couple more comments. I don't know anything about the German son. Hopefully he's nothing like his father, but I do know Nora Schweiss. She's an attractive woman. She spends a lot of time in Chicago, also down in Florida. I've met her several times at Richard's Bar, at the Taylor Street Fest, at Mark Anthony's Fest. She has her own wine company, but I don't know anything about the German son. But if you want to educate me, let me know. Primo, again, I don't believe No-Nos was an informant. He was an active boss of Chicago outfit. I think if they had more to corroborate Nick's testimony, that he would have been charged as one of the men that took part in the brutal beatdown of the Spilotro brothers. But all they had was Nick placing him there. Nick claims that John No-Nos DeFranzo unloaded a small 22 caliber gun that fell out of Michael's pants, and that he wiped a smudge of blood off the wall after Tony got beaten, stomped to death. But that's Nick placing John DeFranzo at the scene. Pat's the dentist, the FBI informant who was obsessed with his brother's murders, he was putting pressure on the government to charge John No-Nos DeFranzo. But believe me, if they had more to corroborate what Nick said, No-Nos would have been charged as well. Joey Andriaca just passed away. Joe Lombardo died. Joe Upa died. Most of all these guys are gone. No, Pete DeFranzo was made a couple months on Father's Day after Nick Calabrese was made. Yeah, Iupa, the guy who would whack a ham sandwich. He led with violence, man. Anybody that broke a rule or got out of line or even thought was going to be an informant, he wasn't taking any chances, man. Can you imagine, though, being in somebody like that's presence? But thanks so much, guys. It's been an hour. Appreciate everybody taking time on your Labor Day to check out my channel. Have a great week. If you like my Chicago mob trial stories, please hit the like button. subscribe, share with your friends. I appreciate all the comments. And let me know, if you were a jury on that trial, would you have found Nick Calabrese credible? And for my haters out there, it's Labor Day, bro. Put down the drink, turn off the TV, and take the old lady to Olive Garden, will you? Ciao.